How you can create work items in Ravetree. If you're looking at a table view of work items, one option is to go down here, add item, and this will be like a quick add work item. Okay, we can just hit return, and there it goes. Okay, pretty easy. But what we're going to really focus on here is how to create a work item with the work item form. So we're going to click on the plus button, select work item, and here we have the work item form. You can put in the title, and we can specify the type of work item. And you'll notice the default type is task, but there are other options that you can choose from. These are really just labels. Nothing really changes by selecting a different type, but they can be useful later if you decide that you want to run some filters or some reports around certain types of work items. The priority can be set here. On the right, we have the work item key. You'll notice that in this case, it is auto-generated for us. This is a setting in the admin section. We've got the start date, the due date. You can make the work item repeat by clicking here, and there's different repeat options for you. We can link the service item, link the work item to a service item. And let's just say this one. Here's the assignee. And the assignee will default to whoever is creating the work item. So this is me. And so there I am, but you can change it. And one thing to point out before I change it is you'll notice that it adds you as a follower. Followers receive all of the important notifications around the work item. For example, if the work item is due today, or if it's overdue, or if someone makes a comment on the work item, followers will receive those notifications. But let's say we want to assign this to someone else, say Julie. Now it added her, but it still kept me. Okay, so that way, maybe I'm the project manager and I want to get all the notifications, but of course I can remove myself if I want to. Okay, next we have the work role, and it will default to that user's work role, but you can change it. It may be that you know the work role, but you don't know who the assignee should be, so you might set that first. Over here you can set the team. And all of these are optional unless you have chosen to make some of these fields required. That is something that you can control in the admin section. Down here you can specify the parent work item. So if you have sort of like a task and subtask type relationship, we refer to those as like kind of a parent-child relationship. So you could specify the parent for this work item if you need to. Here you can link the work item to a project. You can specify the account, the contact, and also you can add tags. These fields down here are custom fields, so we're going to ignore those. If we go to the description tab, this is where you can put in all of the important details about the work item. Over here, we can create a checklist for the work item. And you can drag and drop to reorder these. Over here, you can upload any important files related to the work item. If we click on dependencies, we can establish dependency relationships, and you can specify the predecessor work items. So these are work items that need to be completed before you can start yours. Or you can specify the successor work items, so work items that depend on you. And the way this works is, let's say that this is task B, and I specify task A as a predecessor. As soon as task A has been completed, I will be notified that I can now start on my task. Likewise, if a successor work item is, say, task C, then as soon as I finish my work item, it would then notify the assignee of that successor. Now, if we click on the budget tab, there's a lot of information here for setting up a project budget. And if you've seen the video on how to create a project, then you'll know that a project budget can be built from the bottom up from the work item budgets. So in other words, you have a project. Inside that project are work items, and each one of those work items can have its own budget. And then the project budget will become the sum total of the work item budgets. That is an option. You don't have to do it that way. But if you want to have project budgets built from the bottom up, that's one reason why you may want to specify a work item budget. Another reason might be the work item could be standalone. Maybe it's not linked to a project, but you still want to have a budget. So let's look at the different options. So first of all, the work item could be billable or non-billable. And if you've linked this work item to a project, it may inherit that billable status from the project, depending on different settings. But if it's non-billable, you can turn off the budget. So we have the financial budget and the time budget. So if you don't need any of those, you can just disable everything. But let's turn them back on. And let's first look at this, the budget information. So the financial budget can be built from the labor budget, which we see here, and the expense budget. But we could turn them off. Let's say we don't need expenses. So with the labor budget, we can come in here and just say, it's $1,000 and it's a fixed budget. Same thing with expenses. So $500 and it's a fixed expense budget. Now you can itemize the expense budget, and you could itemize around different expense categories. So maybe we know we're going to put in a little bit into airfare, and then maybe materials. So this way you build the budget kind of from the bottom up. Okay. Now let's just turn that off. Another option is you could use roll up. Okay, so what this will do is let's imagine that this work item has 5 children underneath it. So like 5 subtasks. Okay, and each one of those subtasks has a budget of $100. Well, if we use roll up, then the budget would become $500. So it will basically roll up the budgets of those subtasks to become the budget for this parent task. So that's what roll up is all about. You can roll up time, and you can also roll up the labor budget as well. One last option with the labor budget is to have it calculated. And what this does is, instead of simply entering the labor budget amount, it calculates that amount from the total time budget, let's say 10 hours, multiplied by whatever the bill rate is for this work item. Well, we have set this to non-billable, so that's why it's still 0. But let's change that. Let's set this to billable. And furthermore, we need to change it from fixed fee, we'll come back to that in a second, to time and materials. And we're going to say this will be at a custom rate of $100 an hour. Okay, so now you'll see that it's multiplied that $100 an hour times the 10 hours to give me the labor budget. So that's kind of the benefit of choosing to calculate the labor budget. Now, the bill rate can also come from these other sources. So instead of a custom rate, maybe it's the member rate. Maybe the assignee has a certain bill rate. It turns out in this case, the person that we added does not have a personal rate. Let's maybe put it back at Mark and see if he has a personal bill rate. And it looks like he does. So now that Mark is the assignee, his member rate, his personal rate is $150 an hour. Another option is the project rate. Now we have not linked, and it's telling us here, we have not linked this work item to a project, but if we had, and if that project has a bill rate, it would use that rate. Likewise, we could use a retainer rate. We're getting another warning letting us know that we have not linked this work item to a retainer, but if we had, and if that retainer had a bill rate, then that's the rate that would show up. And then lastly, we have the work roll rate, which happens to be $80. And we can go back over here to info and see the work roll is designer, and apparently that rate is $80. So that's how this works with time and materials work items. The other option, of course, is fixed fee. And there's a couple options with it being fixed fee. One is that the fixed fee for the work item comes from the financial budget. So let's put this back and let's give it some financial budget, say $400. So there we go. That is now the fixed fee. We could also add an expense budget, maybe $100. And since both of these are selected, both the labor and expense budget are selected to calculate the financial budget, that becomes the fixed fee budget for the work item. The other option is service item price. Now, this will pull in the fee that you've added for the service item. And this can be controlled in the admin section under service items. But if we go back to info, this is where we set the service item. And let's pick a different one. Let's actually close that. Website audit. Okay, so this service item, if we go back to budget, has a price. So again, in the admin section where we create these service items, you have an option to indicate or specify a price for the service item. This one happens to be $500. So in that way, if you're working with service items, then you can just easily have that be the fixed fee for the work item. So hopefully you've seen that there are a lot of different options here for setting your project budget information in the work item. And hopefully this was a helpful video.